Jungle, named one of the summer's best thrillers by the New York Times. Erica.
Uh-oh.
I didn't practice this. Ferencik?
Ferencik. Like dead people.
Like dead people. Erica Ferencik will present a slideshow from her month-long research trip to the Peruvian Amazon. Her book tells the story of one woman's terrifying journey of survival in the Amazonian jungles. Erica is also the author of The River at Night, which Oprah, have we heard of Oprah? Oprah chose as the #1 pick, calling the book the page-turning novel you've been waiting for, a heart-pounding debut. Entertainment Weekly, which is now monthly, but they're still calling it weekly, named it a must-read, calling it a harrowing, visceral, white-knuckle rush. And very cool, Miramax recently optioned the novel into a film. So Erica's work has also appeared in Salon and the Boston Globe, as well as on National Public Radio, NPR. So all 20 of us or so, let's give a big round of applause for Erica. All right, thanks so much, Erica.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Tewksbury Library. Thanks for schlepping out tonight and all the rain and garbaginess out there. Has anyone read the book? Just curious. Anyone read the book? Anyone been to the jungle? Anyone been to the Amazon? So I can say anything, huh? And you'll believe me, because you have to believe me. Does Disney count? No, I am sorry. Disney is not what I found down there. So where did I get this crazy idea? I was talking to a friend, and one of the first things you ask a friend, where did you grow up? And she said her name is Pam Rickenbach, and she said, I grew up in the Amazon. I was like, what are you talking about? So she tells me this story. She was a sort of disaffected foster kid, bouncing from family to family, never happy, 16 years old. She moves down to Bolivia. She becomes fluent in Spanish. She falls in love with a man, and a native guy, and moves with him to his jungle village. But in the real story, she doesn't come back till she's 26 years old. Can you imagine that? So I had this great opportunity to interview someone who had actually lived there for 10 years, had a child, and basically survived an incredible ordeal. So my book is inspired by a true story, this true story. And so why did I relate to this at all? You know, I mean, I guess for my part, when I was 19 years old, I didn't have it as bad as she did, you know, but I was a lost kid, you know. I went to Europe when you could do that for, you know, $5 in the early 80s, and you could actually spend some time. And I got into some really dangerous situations. I was just a vulnerable, naive kid. So I guess that's why I related to her story. So I'm going to read from the book, so you get an idea of who this Lily Bushwald is. Okay. So this takes place in Cochabamba, Bolivia, which think of it as like the Boston of Bolivia, the main city. Okay. Lily is sitting with her friends, and she's about to shoplift a store. Okay. So she says, oh, it's in her point of view, but this book is written from the point of view of when she's 27 years old, looking back at this time. So she has that benefit of retrospect. So she says, for me, thieving was a life skill, like lying my way out of a jam or taking off at the first sign of trouble. Most 19-year-olds bum around Europe a month or two, then scoot back home to college like good boys and girls. Well, screw that. I was a half-starved, high-strung wild child who lived out of a backpack, homeless since I was 13, obsessed with Spanish-speaking countries, animals, and the jungle. I was also a desperately lonely, cocky yet petrified infant. In the space of a minute, I could drown in self-pity for what I thought I'd missed, a real family, then toss that aside to satisfy a rabid curiosity for the world and everything in it. That second part may have been what saved me in the end. So now I'm going to read a longer piece, and this piece is actually the prologue, but you'll pick up on this. It actually takes place about 3/4 of the way through the book when she's deep in the jungle. She's made the decision, and she's pretty much alone. Excuse me. So, in your mind, play those jungle sounds, okay? Get those going good, all right? It was past midnight, some lonely, small hour of the morning. Naked, I dropped to my knees at the shore. Moonlight glowed on the mist that drifted above the glistening black river. I lifted a gourd full of river water and poured it over my hugely pregnant body, not caring what or who was watching or crawling toward me from the steaming jungle that loomed behind me. I would have done anything, was doing anything for relief from the heat that was driving me half out of my mind, crushing me like a giant hand. I took bites of hot, sharp air, waited for any sort of breeze, filled the gourd again and again, drenched myself, gasping. But the moment the water flowed off my flesh, I stippled again with sweat. My breast glowed golden in the starlight, my nipples like sprung plugs, belly swollen, drum tight, unrecognizable as my own. I squeezed my eyes shut, even my eyelids were sweating, trying to picture the beloved face of this child's father, Omar, out hunting for game so we could survive. All around me, night creatures, insects, frogs, birds, hummed, croaked, chattered, their calls breaking off now and then as they listened for their predator's approach. Throwing the calabash aside, I pushed myself to my feet, stumbling up the short walk on hardened dirt to our hut. It had been 3 weeks since Omar and the rest of the hunters had been gone, weeks in which my belly had exploded with growth. I felt the jungle wanting life craving more life, and I felt just one more obscene part of it, like the strangler figs choking the trees. This baby was taking me over, tapping every ounce of my strength. Back in the gloom of the hut, I lifted the mosquito netting that draped our thin mattress, making sure the metal cans the legs of the bed stood in brimmed with kerosene. On the one night I hadn't filled them, I woke to a 5-inch translucent green scorpion on the back of my hand, its spiral tail quivering and stuttering. My screams brought the Ayacharian women in, rubbing their eyes and laughing at me as they batted it off with a broom. Afterward, they wandered back to their huts, slurring in sleepy Spanish, their children scuffing back to their beds. I crawled onto my back on the thin mat, inhaling the smell of burning cecropia wood that sifted through the grates of our clay oven, picturing the stone gray scales of 6 armored catfish, their long whiskers sizzling in the embers. Lying so very still, I thought about the delicacy of everything that lives, how this fine mesh suspended over me, so easily torn, was the only thing between me and every vicious flying insect, every creeping beast. I thought of the parts of America that I missed. Dairy Queen, the movies, candy bars, Cheerios, malls, scented soap, libraries. Fall leaves, snow, things Omar had never seen, had no interest in seeing. To calm myself, I closed my eyes and conjured a blizzard, In my mind, snow swirled down a mountain pass, sugaring the pines until the winds picked up, and piles drifted against houses and barns, painting everything with the same white brush. I cracked open my mouth to taste the cold flakes on my lips and tongue. I swear the thought cooled me. I fell off into this heaven until I felt a presence near my feet. Something silky slid across my ankles, followed by a heavy, heated weight over my toes. Solid warmth oozed under my calves. Still half asleep, I got to my elbows and looked down my body at the wide, trapezoidal head of an anaconda, neon green with flecks of yellow around her cleft mouth. As if suspended by some mad puppet maker, she hovered at eye level, swaying hypnotically. My eyes followed hers, back and forth, my head doing this little dip along with her. I didn't scream because even as I watched, I wasn't sure what I was seeing. I couldn't tell if she was real. She encircled my ankles. Pellet eyes locked on mine. Her head made its way up the length of my body as she languidly wreathed herself around my legs, and oh dear God, why I don't know, but I didn't feel like struggling. She had me. I could feel her eggs, solid lumps just under the satin of her white belly. The meat of her was soft and blood warm. I couldn't take my eyes off the grace of her as she coiled her ever thicker body around my knees, wrapped herself around my thighs, pelvis, groin, head swinging unsupported. She opened her mouth, her vermilion tongue snapped out, forked and flickering. She blew her sultry breath on me and said, "Ah." Each time I exhaled, she cinched tighter. She knew me. It was intimate, sensual. She melted into me, compressed me, made me smaller. I could feel her read my muscles, map the suck and hush of blood in my veins, plan every bone she would snap and crush. The iridescent diamonds of her flesh whispered dry, and I didn't care if she kept going. It just felt so good. But one more turn, and she would encase my belly. I need to do something now, I thought. This is my baby. If I can't care about myself, I must care for this child, Omar's child. Her breath singed my face with all the sweetness of decay as I thought, come on, Lily, this is happening, do something. I remembered Omar telling me snakes smell their prey with their tongue. Hers snapped in and out ever faster, sniffing my fecundity. My ripeness seemed to enrage her. Quickly, she looped once more on my belly, squeezing tight as if to pop me like a balloon, head raised in ecstasy. I woke the next morning. The first day of the fourth week, Omar had been gone. To the shrieks of macaws, their cries so heart-wrenching it felt like the end of the world every single day. Of course, it had all been a dream. Still, I couldn't explain why my body ached or the bruises that throbbed on my thighs. From the doorway of our hut, I watched a vulture swing up and down over the river, a deathly black cutout against the pale blue sky. I was beginning to give up. And then I heard his voice. The relief was chemical. His voice among the others down by the boats made something break and reform in my chest. I was desperate to run to the shore, but dizziness overwhelmed me, and I had to sit and wait for it to pass. Omar crashed into the hut, arms and chest still streaked with mud and blood from the hunt. He threw his arms around me and pulled me to my feet, stroking my hair, crying. Why was he crying? Lily, you're alive, thank God, he sobbed. Are you all right? Tell me the baby's okay. He said, I killed an anaconda last night. I had to. He was hunting me. His eyes searched my face like there was something I should know about this. Lily, he said, they mate for life. They come after your mate when you kill theirs. They hold grudges. It's a spirit thing. They travel in other worlds. So I told him about her crushing weight, her breathtaking power, the bright green scales hissing across my flesh, the wonder and terror of her visit. He listened closely, nodding, serious, his handsome face a map of exhaustion and relief. As the words tumbled out of my mouth, I felt myself giving in, believing, finally, that everything in this place was magical and connected, that nothing here was happenstance, that my child's life depended on opening my eyes and heart to this new world. So that's the prologue. Oh, this mic, I apologize for this mic. So that's about halfway through the book, 3/4 of the way through the book. She's very pregnant. She's trying to figure out how to deal with hostile poachers, crazy missionaries, and survive. So as I was writing this book, or trying to figure out how to write this book, I was completely fascinated by the subject matter. I'm going to put this down here and not even deal with it, or just put it over. Can you hear me? Oh, God, okay. How am I going to write this book? You know what I mean? I had never been to the Amazon or anything like it, and so I needed to figure out what I was going to do. So I bought every book I could get my hands on and read it and took a bunch of notes, but I still wasn't feeling it. I still wasn't thinking like, okay, I need to see it, hear it, feel it, like I did with River at Night. I don't know if you've read that book, but that took place in northern Maine, and I went to northern Maine and I interviewed people there. But in any case, so movies. I watched a bunch of movies. This is from Aguirre, The Wrath of God. I don't know, has anyone seen that movie? You've seen that movie? Okay. Fantastic movie about the jungle, if you're interested. Watch it while we still have a jungle. But I wanted to, and this is a very old map, forgive me, but I was talking to friends and I was like, okay, I want to go to the jungle. And they're like, okay, well, that is about 2.12 million square miles. In South America, you have to be more specific. It actually encompasses 9 countries, parts of 9 countries. So I had to figure out really where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And this is an old map showing some of the deforestation. I'm sure you've heard of the tragic things going on now with the fires, but we're not going to talk about that tonight too much. But you should be aware of that. It's known as the Amazon rainforest is known as the lungs of the world. Its life force is the Amazon River. It's the longest river in the world. And it starts as a trickle high up in the Andes Mountains. And it travels 4,000 miles. Think about the United States, that same distance, basically, to Belém, Brazil, where it opens up to some places 300-mile opening or bay into the Atlantic. And it's 60 times the size of the Nile. It is the largest river in the world. It's so large that even 1,000 miles inland, it's still 7 miles wide. Ocean liners can travel 2,300 miles up, and it contains 2/3 of all the fresh water on Earth. It also could supply New York City with fresh water for 9 years with 1 day of its discharge. And the current is so strong that 125 miles in the ocean is still fresh water. That's how strong the current is. And it's made up of a mosaic of ecosystems, not just jungle, but seasonal forests, deciduous, and savannas. But we're just mainly going to talk about jungle today. More than half of the world's estimated 10 million species of plants and animals live there. 1 out of every 4 plants on Earth live there. And the reason the plants aren't all eaten is a testimony to their ability to be chemical warriors to ward off insects. We're going to see a few of those. So, you know, the argument is, oh, it's okay to cut down the rainforest. It only takes 55 years to grow back, but it took 55 million years for the biodiversity that is there to be there. So if this were to be cut down, it would be catastrophic for a lot of reasons. It's being cut down, and indigenous people, their land is being stolen, and the loss of habitat continues. And ironically, however, if all the plants and animals were used for their actual purposes, chocolate, rubber, and so on, it's been proven that their value would outvalue any hamburgers that could be, you know, made from the cows when you cut down the fields. So I want to talk about some of the animals that I saw there in my trip, either saw or heard about. You're going to be able to tell the difference between my crappy photographs and the ones I got off the web. But so this is, who knows what this is? This is an anteater. Everything in the jungle is larger than it is here. This guy is 7 feet long, and he can stand up on his hind legs, and you don't want to run into him because they're actually quite vicious. They actually love termites even more than ants. This is a smoky jungle frog. He is 8 inches long and 4 pounds. So he's an absolutely enormous frog. This is a Goliath tarantula that we coaxed out of the ground with some hamburger. And yeah. This is a capybara. A capybara, it's a rodent. It's the largest rodent in the world. They run up to 120 pounds. And indigenous folks still hunt them for their meat. And just a little bit about where I stayed. I stayed at this place called Amazonia Expeditions. My cabin was on top there. Everything was built from the jungle, if you can imagine. And so everything was on stilts, 35-foot stilts, because 3 months a year, the river rises 35 feet. So I was there between wet and dry season, but for 3 months of a year, you get around by boat. If you can imagine your home in Tewksbury, wherever you live, 9 months a year, you use your car. 3 months a year, your boat better be working, right? So they live this way, and the river rises, and everything that lives in the river rises as well. We're going to see pictures. All of the dolphins, all of the snakes, all of the electric eels, everything rises up, and your whole world changes. It becomes a different land. It affects fishing because it's harder to fish when there's much more water, and so on. So yeah, that's another view of where I stayed. You see, and the rules, I guess I can walk around because I'm not attached to anything here. And the rules were never go on terra firma on land alone, not that I ever would, and never go without wearing your boots, which you will see a picture of. This is a snake skin outside my room. It's 8 feet long. I found it in the morning. You can imagine how big the snake was that was shedding its skin as I was sleeping. And you see this thatch. I mean, everything, the roofs are made of thatch. What lives in thatch? Insects. What eats insects? Lizards, snakes, vampire bats. There actually are vampire bats. It's a true thing. So every couple of years, these roofs have to be replaced. And my roof in my room, I don't know what was up there, but I do know there were bats in my bathroom ceiling. Because every time I turned on my shower, I heard them singing. They liked my shower. These are the boots drying every day. You had to wear these boots, and they had to drying outside. Not that anything gets dry in the jungle. You have to understand, it's 100 degrees, 100% humidity. So there are these women there that would do our laundry. You know, you pay them, and then you hang it up, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And I'm like, after 5 days, I just put my wet clothes back on. You know what I'm saying? So these are woolly monkeys that joined us one day. I'm rinsing my boots off after a long day. This is the laundry shed where the women would do their laundry. And this is a python that was living in the laundry shed. And it's really interesting, like the way people live with animals there. They are aware of dangers, but they're also aware that, okay, that guy, all he wants is mice, you know? So they're calmly doing laundry, and that guy is living up. It's a very different world, very different world. This guy, this baby owl, was this big. I found him outside my room. There had been a storm in the middle of the night, never heard anything like it. And the trees are so close together in the jungle that when one tree falls, you hear it, but also it can bring down 25 more trees. So these nests were disturbed, and this baby owl was outside my door, and the mother kept giving him food, and then one day he disappeared. God knows what happened to him. I had a guide. I just showing you that there were also female guides, and they were just as great as the male guides in knowing everything about the jungle. So knowledgeable, so good at making you feel safe. She's sharpening her machete. We all carried machetes into the jungle, all of us, for protection. This was my guide. His name was Adrian, of all things. And we're setting off one day. And it was so strange to be somewhere with no buildings, I can't even explain. You don't hear or smell any gasoline or anything like. You smell the diesel from the boat, but just to be somewhere this is 5,000 square miles. We were in 5,000 square miles of wilderness. My guide was so amazing. He could hear a storm coming from 5 miles away. He knew exactly when it was going to hit us. He started hunting for his family when he was 9 and surviving, and he would spearfish. And the water was so interesting. It was very thick and chocolatey because it was full of microorganisms. So I thought it was pretty frightening. I wasn't going in there. This is an aguaje. It's sort of like their orange. It's a very beautiful fruit. It'll probably be the next, acai bowl, It's very nutritious, tastes like saffron, cinnamon. So this is a plant that's called the chimarrón plant. It translates into the walking tree. Now, why does it walk? Okay, it has legs, you can see that. So the jungle's always changing, the sunlight, the shadow. So when one of the legs is in shadow for some time, it pulls itself out of the ground, dies, and goes back into the plant, and a sunny side of the plant will sprout a leg out and down. So in time, I'm not talking much time, this plant walks. It walks about 2 feet every 10 days, something like that. Everything in the jungle is large, wet, and fast. Things grow incredibly quickly. If you parked your car in the jungle, overnight vines would be growing over it and securing it, and you'd have to hack your way into your car. This is a close-up of one of the legs in the jungle. Never touch anything. You're walking, you might be walking in forests around here, you're like reaching and holding, and You don't do that there. There are poisonous insects, poisonous plants, poisonous all kinds of things, but there are also very sharp things. There is bark that has these spikes. They can be this long. Anyway, point is, this is a close-up of one of those legs, and indigenous folks use those to grate manioc, which is a kind of potato. So they use that as a tool. This is a termite nest. They're absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Remember, it was the anteaters that loved the termites. And I'm standing under one. That's a hat. That's not my hair. What'd you do to your hair? No, I was dying. It was 1,000,000 degrees. Actually, and so these are really, again, what did I say? Large, wet, and fast. Termites, huge, 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 this big. So the queen is about this big. And so the thing is, the lore is, if you're starving and lost in the jungle, you can chop one of those down, find the queen, and eat it. Luckily, I did not have to do that. Who knows what this is? A crazy guess. Nutty, yes, poison frog. I took this journey deep into the jungle to find these tiny little, very endangered frogs. And this little guy was like as big as this part of my finger. And he exudes in his sweat a toxin, enough toxin in him to kill 10 people. You do not want to touch these things. One signal of these beautiful, again, this is from the web, so you can see how beautiful they are, but one signal to predators is, if I'm beautiful, don't eat me, because I'll kill you. So that's one way of signaling that. These are owl monkeys. They were right outside my room, staring at me. This is a pygmy marmoset, very cute, smallest monkey in the world, lives on tree sap. Very, very common little guy. This is a tree rat. A rat that lives in a tree. What did I say? Large guy. Now, who knows what that is? Come on, you guys. Sloth, excellent. Sloths are so hard to see. I was with my guide, and he was like, "You can't see that? It's like right there." I mean, it was just like, but that's their job, to hide, so they're not eaten, so they're not hunted down, and they really don't move. They do everything in their sleep. They die in their sleep. Sometimes they give birth in their sleep. They are always there. It is crazy. And they move so seldom that their algae gets in rivulets in their fur, and they turn green, which is another way they sort of hide. Here's another picture. Again, these are the best I could do, guys. Yeah, but here's your Disney shot for you. So he can rotate his head 90 degrees and keep the rest of his body still. And they're cute, but like all these animals, they have claws. They can F you up. I mean, really, they'll do it slowly, but they will do it, And her body is so specialized, she can't even pick up her young. She just sort of crawls along the ground if she ever falls to the ground. And the reason they have to stay so still is because their number one predator is called a harpy eagle, biggest raptor in the world. And here's a picture. And, right? And this guy's wounded, and so he's being rehabilitated. But to give you an idea of the size of these guys, and I saw one come out of the air, swoop down, snatch a sloth out of the branches and fly away with it. So that was quite something to see. I did go to a village to sort of check out how people live. I wanted to see that. Here's my guide. Here's sort of so this roof is absolutely free because you make it from the jungle, which is kind of cool, right? Isn't that kind of a free roof? Doesn't happen very often, but again, you do have to replace it every couple of years. The kids were so cute. I don't speak Spanish. Who speaks Spanish? I don't speak Spanish, so that was kind of like a shame. This is a paprika fruit. Who knew? Just growing in the village. Here's an example of their home. It's open. Things can come in, but then things can go out. Notice everything is on stilts for those April, May, June when the rains come. And here's Adrian being very happy because there's enough money finally to build a clinic for women who are pregnant women so they can actually give birth in not just some pretty crummy room that I did see. So they're building an actual clinic. And your money goes so far there, it's very satisfying to give to them. You give them, $20 and it translates into $100 worth of something good. This is a school. This is a termite nest. Everything in the jungle wants to take over any civilization. Everything grow, like when I was there, no web access because plants kept growing over the satellite. It just was insane. Here's the only phone in 500 miles, and it did not work. It did not work. This is a view from a little store. Local people swimming. I would never do that. They did it. Local woman, she's making dinner. She's making this thing. It's an armored catfish, a very prehistoric looking fish. They live in these holes along the river. You never put your hand in any, you never know what you are. And this is a beehive that was inside this woman's house. Yes, this open house, bees flying in, they didn't bother anyone. And she pulled out this tray and there was this dark honey and she gave some to her kid. It was all beautiful. It was crazy. So you remember how I said everything is large? Okay, so Amazon, in the Amazon are these fish called pirarucu. They are the largest freshwater fish in the world. They're very ancient, very ancient. They kind of look like an eel, the way their head is. And they have these bony tongues, which we'll see. This is a fishing chart saying that there are, you can only catch so many fish, although people break those rules all the time. These are the tongues from that fish that people use as graters and that tourists buy. What's that? Who knows what that is? Piranha. And they really are quite common. We went fishing, we caught a bunch for dinner and had them. They taste like whitefish, they're very bony. I stayed at this wonderful place where like the food was great. The people who were making the food, I should have a picture of it. They made these beautiful meals. Everything was from the jungle, and they made it like they really carved the tomato. They made everything very beautiful. So if you caught fish, yeah, they would clean it for you and present it with. It was. I'd like to see people just so proud of what they were doing. They were proud to make the food. They're proud to clean up. They were proud. It was wonderful. I'm showing you this because I want to show you an example of adaptation. These animals adapting to their environment. This is a four-eyed fish. This fish can hunt under the water and above the water. Okay? These are macaws. I'm sure you've seen macaws, right? Endangered for their beauty. These guys are at a salt lick because many animals need salt. It's called a kolpa. So they're visiting the kolpa at dawn. This is a tree I just put in there because everything that's pretty is dangerous. This is covered with fire ants. And the next slides are just birds. I don't know the names of them. Just enjoy the slides. Many hawks, storks, woodpecker. Again, huge, huge. Hello. Yeah, I'm not a bird person, but so these are macaws. They do mate for life. They fly together all the time. They're super noisy, and they're always going like arguing like old married people, like at each other's throats. You know, it's funny. Kingfisher, those were everywhere. Huge. We have kingfishers. These are huge. This is called a hoatzin. It's like their turkey. It's kind of a stinky bird. It smells like rotting flesh. And it can barely fly, and it makes a funny noise. It's a hilarious bird. And I'll talk about this tree. So we're heading into the floating forest during the day. And nothing was more frightening than the floating forest during the day, except the floating forest during the night. This was there during the day. This is an anaconda. This is why you don't like drip your hand along the boat or anything like that. You always are conscious. You just have to be conscious of everything. You can't space out.
I'd be afraid of what's falling out of the tree.
I was terrified all the time. I really did look to my guide to sort of see whether or not I should be afraid. Like, not that he, but these people, he was just calm, These are river otters. This is a giant river otter. They grow to 7 feet. And again, they're quite vicious if you were to mess around with them, but they're very beautiful to watch them play. Look at his hands. Hands are amazing. This is just a shot one morning. Here I am getting ready for my night hike, pretending I'm not scared shitless, Anyway, it's a couple things. This is a pink-toed tarantula. It's about as big as a dinner plate. They do jump. And this is going into the floating forest at night, and we were there, and this electric eel jumped out of the water. It looked like a tire, and then it twisted and fell down. And that was the only time I saw my guide sort of like saying, whoa. And I was like, do you ever get afraid? Like, what really makes you afraid? And he's like, he really said this. He's like, well, I don't know how you do it, but how do you deal with snowstorms? What do you do? It sounds terrifying. How do you, can you imagine though if you've never seen a snowstorm or everything freezes? What is that?
Exactly the opposite of what you see.
Exactly. So, for him, that he just could not comprehend. Could not comprehend. And this is an electric eel. This is from the web. I did not get the photograph of what was jumping out of the water. My reflexes aren't that good. Just some stuff I saw. And this is just a dugout canoe. It must have been, I was just so impressed by villagers would just like jump into these canoes, go out there, catch their dinner. Very casual. I don't know what this is, but it scared the crap out of me, so I took a picture of it. This is a rubber tree. People know a little bit about, from around 1890 to 1912, Spaniards and other folks came in and enslaved much of the indigenous population, tortured them to obtain this rubber from rubber trees. And it was a horrible, Henry Ford, to make his tires. And it took 20 years of wiping out 90% of the indigenous population for them to figure out they could get the seeds and actually go to the Philippines and actually start a rubber tree farm. And wouldn't that be a lot more easy and more profitable, because it's all about profit, than doing it the way we're doing it. And rubber is so interesting. I was like, rubber, what are you talking about? That's just like saying, how could that be? but you scrape a tree and actual rubber comes out, not a composite. I mean, you know, and so tribes actually use it to, indigenous tribes used to use it to, they would collect it and they would heat it slightly and they would put their foot in it and then they would peel off the bottom and it would be like a sandal. And you think about it, it's rubber, right? I'm just messing around. This is dawn. I'm on my way to see the shaman because I was dying to interview a shaman, right? So this is the shaman's house. And his name was Adolfo, and he was the real deal. He probably weighed 75 pounds. He was very small. But his father was a shaman, his father's father, way back, 5 generations. But his sons and grandsons just want to be DJs and be famous rock stars, Iriquitos. But he pulled out all his cures for me. I mean, his training is very, very arduous. These guys used to, I don't know if they do it anymore, but go into the jungle by themselves for 6 months, for 9 months, by themselves or with a teacher. And they purify their bodies. They take it quite seriously. I'm holding a bottle of ayahuasca, which I did not indulge in. It's a very intense hallucinogenic, but you know, he claimed to have cures for everything from menstrual cramps to certain forms of cancer, eczema, all kinds of things. And he told me that he knew that he was going to die at age 83, and he was fine with it. These are his pets. This is called a day bat. The only bat in the world that comes out during the day. And very cute. This is called an angelfish. They're like coins and they swim sideways. And one day, about 100 of them flipped into the boat. It kind of freaked me out. This is a paper wasp nest. It's an absolutely enormous, like this big around, going up into the tree. And very, very vicious kind of wasp. So when I first started walking in the jungle with my guide, you know, the first days I was like, chatting, as I always do, very talkative, you know, and kind of loud, and you know, and then I would fall back because I wanted to take photographs of things, and he would go on ahead. Meanwhile, there's no trail. So he came up to me and he said a couple things. Be quiet and stay right behind me. I said, why? And he said, well, I'm listening. I'm listening for snakes in the grass. I'm listening for monkeys in the trees. I'm listening for any kind of things that either would be a danger to you or that you might want to see. And he said, especially stand right behind me because I can only clear so much trail and make sure nothing's between us. That shut me right up. Right behind the dude for the next 3 weeks. So my point is, being quiet, animals are listening too. You're not just listening to them, right? They're listening, they're looking at you. You can't see them. Thousands of eyes are looking at you. It's actually true in these forests, but not as much. This wasp sends out a scout. If it hears a noise, stings you, goes back to its home, tells everyone, and they all come. And you're effed really bad. So there's that. Coming back. Who's heard of these? Has anyone heard of pink dolphins, right? Pink dolphins. There are freshwater dolphins that swim thousands of miles up this river. Freshwater dolphins. They are pink. Different. I saw one. I just happened to be looking in the right direction. But they're considered by the local population to be enchanted. and magical, and they swim under the river in a place called the Encantada. And they are known to turn into beautiful women and seduce your husband. So if your husband disappears for a few days, you know where he's been with the boti, the pink dolphin. Many trees are considered sacred. One of them is called the lupuna tree. And I saw one, it was probably from here to that table, wide. Couldn't see the top, obviously. And you could have people build dwellings against these places. And shamans consider them sacred, and shamans actually fight a lot together. It's a thing they do, who's the better shaman. And if one shaman feels like he's being attacked by another, he'll put his soul inside one of these trees to hide it, just so you know. Don't know what lives in there, not going to find it out. This is a tapir, another strange animal. It's pig-like, it's like this big. Has like an elephantine nose. They travel in packs. Kind of dangerous, not as dangerous as white-lipped peccary though, which is the wild hogs. Those guys are quite dangerous. You don't want to get in the way of those. This is a very rare Saki monkey that when I spent so much time there, I got to go to the research lodge and hang out with the dudes who really go out there. So we got some photographs of these very rare monkeys. And actually, these guys are really small. They're not huge, which is different. And this is the uakari monkey. And spider monkey, quite common. We saw a bunch of those, very smart, maybe the smartest, next to capuchin. It's just pictures of what you're walking on, trying to figure out what's under there. One day we came upon a group of woolly monkeys. We were in the canoe. And Adrian had brought along some bananas, and they must have smelled them because these are huge. And one of them jumps into the canoe, and I was like, ah, and Adrian's like, don't scream, don't smile, don't show your teeth because that means aggression, any showing of teeth. So I'm like, give me a banana, give me a banana. So he gives me a banana, I give the guy a banana. He walks away, goes back to Adrian, we gives him more. But look at that tail. Look what he uses to fly through the jungle. See that grip? Isn't that amazing? That's his fifth arm right there. Whatever, third leg, whatever you want to say. Here I am taking and failing the jungle survival course. Because I was supposed to build a dwelling. I was learning all these knots, and here's Adrian, bored, like, when is she gonna finish? And I'm like, I'm not staying in that. Anything could crawl in there. This is an example of what can crawl in your boots. You have to make sure you check your boots each and every time you put them on. Here I am screwing around. Here I am pretending I'm not scared to get on the zip line, which I am. Here's a foot-long centipede. Here's a strange plant. This is an interesting thing. This is called a water plant. And there's a lot of water in the jungle, but, what do you drink, right? So one day I'd forgotten my water bottle, and Adrian's like, no worries. So he goes out there, and he chops his vine down. And he said, drink this. So I drank out of it, and it was just water with a little hint of delicious, sort of like almost a jasmine thing. And this is a big, big deal. It's a big deal to have a water source in the jungle. You are sweating so much. You need to drink so much. And you feel it suddenly. People have died with water in their backpacks. You feel it quite suddenly, how thirsty you get, and it is intense. This is a leech, a large one. This is probably photoshopped. It's an anaconda. They really do grow over 45 feet. In towns, they do attack livestock, and they have to be destroyed at times. Just as a great horned beetle. Now, what's that? What do you think that is?
It's like a caterpillar with a snake head.
It's exactly what it is. That's, you win the prize. It is a sphinx caterpillar because it's trying to look like a pit viper, so it is not attacked. Okay? It's just one example, another picture of adaptation. And this is a owl moth trying to look like an owl, so it's not eaten. These are giant lily pads. This is from the web, but I did see them in person. An example of, see that white flower? Cooperation and adaptation. There's this white flower. It attracts a certain beetle. So it's hot and white, and it opens. And the beetle comes in, the flower closes, and 24 hours later, it's turned red and cool, and it opens, and this scarab beetle flies away looking for another white, hot flower. So this is a system with so many interconnections where animals and plants are working together for survival. Okay, where's the snake? Oh, there it is. This is just a picture of how amazing these plants are. Coming home after a long, frightening day, back to the lodge. And during the writing of the book, I know I'm way far from the book now. I'm almost done with this, by the way. I had to think of my characters, and one of my characters is a shaman, and she's a woman, so a much older woman, and I wanted to find some people and take their pictures and for inspiration to try to create these characters. And there's a tribe. This is a young Yamamoto woman. Again, to build my characters. I know we're flipping around here. Did not see a jaguar. There are people who live there their whole life who never see a jaguar. That's how elusive they are, but I have to give you guys a photograph of a jaguar. This is the howler monkey, loudest land animal in the world. Absolutely never shuts up. You probably have relatives like that. And that's the end. I don't know how much time we have for questions. Do we have any time, Robert, or no?
Sure.
A couple of minutes? Okay.
5 to 10 minutes for questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Would you do it again?
No. Well, I don't need to because I spent so much time there, and
How long were you there?
a month.
Okay.
And that book nearly killed me, how much research I did and how hard I worked to make it a good book. I have moved on from that. I just spent several weeks in Greenland, actually, researching my next book. So I'm in the cold. Yay! I'm a cold person, and I like cold, but whatever. In fact, I was very worried about going to the jungle because I'm not a heat person. One big hot flash, honestly. And so I had to, tell myself, okay, I'm going to be really uncomfortable. So psychologically, I was prepared that I was going to be really uncomfortable, and I was right. But I wasn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't expecting the pleasures of a normal journey. This was a research trip. Although I'm not a martyr, I loved every minute of it, but I wasn't expecting the...
Did you do any of your writing while you were there?
I took a ton of notes. And the interviews, photographs, videos. I was always that was hard because I wanted to enjoy it, but I also knew that I had to constantly aware of my surroundings and like that, so yeah.
Were you afraid at any point?
Yeah, a lot.
Every day?
Every day. Well, it was like I was afraid at this weird level. I'm more like, oh, there's this terrible, scary, poisonous thing. wasn't like I was seeing it. It was like always the possibility of seeing it. Like, just running my hands along just the railing of the place, and then I'm like, oh my God, there's a scorpion right there. If I shouldn't just run my hands along that. You know what I mean? And then just it was just more like the anticipation of it, the dread, like in the night journeys. What's up there? What's gonna follow me? I had a hat. I had a hat. Yeah, I had that, but it was so hot. I just couldn't. And I brought this little tiny little fan from CVS, and I was like, I love you so much. And I brought like 35 AA batteries, thinking I'm fine, it's cool, right? And then I'm like, oh my God, there's another thing the jungle does. It eats batteries overnight. So each 4 batteries lasted 6 hours. Oh, no. Dead, done, over. So when it was done, it was done. When I was done, I was like, all right. That's it.
Is the ground when you got them?
I did. Well, I had ice cream. I don't know, I just like took the longest shower. You can imagine. Because, there's snow running water, and, you're showering with river water. You're showering with river water, so you're never really clean. And like I said, with the clothes, they don't really dry. And it's not like a spa, it's like a spa. It's the opposite of a spa.
It must have been mentally exhausting.
Yes.
You have to be constantly aware of every
Yeah.
little move.
Yeah.
Like, I would have been afraid to move. But, okay, I'm just going to sit here. But it's not going anywhere. It must have been like.
Well, that's right. It was very draining. The parts that weren't like when there were communal meals, and they were in these big rooms, and I felt pretty safe in there. But even in my room, I was like, one night I saw something on the floor, and I couldn't really make out what it was, and ran into the bathroom, and just like I had to pee so bad. I was like, wait till morning because you don't know what's in there, and I couldn't find whatever it was. Like that. I just knew a lot too, because I'd read all those books, and that this is crazy stuff out there. There are these mushrooms that just like puffballs, and if you just touch them and the spores go in your lungs, you have lung damage for life. It's crazy what's out there. So.
You were very courageous to go there.
Thank you. Well, there's a fine line. Stupid.
We're all going to buy the book instead of going ourselves.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Well,
I can even read it. I haven't read it.
well, I was, so going back to the friend who inspired the book, I said, Pam, I'm scared shitless. What am I going to do? And she's like, well, I was okay. And, millions of people live there every day, and they don't die. They don't all die. So I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about that. So she runs a horse rescue in West Brookfield.
Oh, so she's back here.
She's back here, yeah. Her story is quite amazing as well. I won't take you through it, but.
How close to civilization are these people?
Well, depends what you mean by civilization. Where I stayed, I was probably 150 miles down the Amazon in a 5,000 square miles of that nothing. It was just the jungle and this one lodge that I showed you. So, pretty far. But civilization, there was that community I showed you where there's schools, and it's a different life.
Stuff though, like
There's
other foods that they weren't growing.
So so the closest town is called Iquitos, and that's a landlocked town. The only way you can get there is by air or by water, sort of surrounded by swamp, but it's, an actual town. It's a third world country. It's fourth world in many ways. But they get their supplies from Lima, Peru, capital of Peru, which is an actual city I flew from Boston to Miami, Miami to Lima, Lima to Iquitos, and then many, many boats. So that's how everything, everything. Took me 2 days to get there, 2 full days to get there.
Choose that location to go to for research, or was that from the friend? She was?
Well, so as I was trying to figure out where to go, I started talking to people, and people, as people do, say, oh, I have this friend who knows this person who has a thing. And I was like, okay, I'll talk to this friend of a friend. I had coffee with him, and he's a world traveler, and he's like, this place was great, very, very, I wanted just the genuine article, I didn't want anything watered down. I didn't want to die, but, I wanted to have the real experience so that I could bring it to you in the book. That's the whole idea, you know what I mean?
You were there, and then when you came.
I was so lucky. I was perfectly fine. I had a ton of shots, My goal was come home with only one heart beating in your body. No weird things.
Did you have lights at night, or was it?
There was a generator. So at night, they shut off the lights at 9. It was a crappy generator. It was just like little pinpricks of light. You couldn't really. So if you wanted to read, I had a headlamp, but it drew insects, so I wasn't really crazy about that. You were tired at night from being so terrified all day long. I was like, I'll never sleep. I never slept so well. I slept so well. I just completely crashed. So
let's say 1 or 2 more questions for Erica. What do we got? Anyone else have anything?
So is your next book in Greenland? Is it a story of someone are you writing about someone who had an experience there also?
Yeah, it's about a linguist who is called to go to Greenland because at a climate science research center, they found a girl in the glacier, frozen in the glacier, and they thaw her out. She thaws out alive, speaking a language no one understands. So the linguist goes there to try to understand what this girl is saying. So it's a thriller that takes place in this very tense, remote situation.
So what do you classify this book as?
I would classify this as a literary thriller. Yeah, definitely.
Erica, any last words for tonight?
Last words? I don't know if I like that. Yeah. Read the book. I don't care how you read it. Take it out of your beautiful library here. My God, it's gorgeous. And be nice to authors, write a review. You don't have to rewrite the book, but write a sentence and Goodreads, Amazon, and it's just always a nice thing. And read everything. Read. That's why you're here, I'm sure. You've already accomplished that.
Well, let's give Erica a big round of applause.